FIDE Master Victor News. Thank you for coming to my webinar. Today we are going to talk about strategies that you can use when you have to play approximately equal position. However, we first are likely to cover the homework that I provided you last time. There was no webinar last Sunday because I was traveling, so I was traveling to Mendoza, which is a region of Argentina where the most wine is produced. So this is a really nice place. Not the town. The town is just an average town, but the province, all this nature around the city is really beautiful. Okay, perfect. So what do we see? Please let me know whether the quality of the video and audio is good. So I'm using this camera which moves when I move my head. So it's so funny. Well, this is probably the first camera which adapts to the movements of a streamer. Okay, so yeah, everything works really well, and we also need to discuss what you should be doing in case if you play equal positions. But wait a sec, there was a homework. Let's first discuss the homework. And as for the homework, there were a few. Let me open it. So there were a few positions that I gave you. Okay, one happened after queen d4. No, I cannot find it. Okay, just a sec. Maybe that was. Yeah, this is the one where I asked you what would you suggest. Thank you for those who sent the answer. So what can I say about queen d4? Well, the queen there may become the object of the attack. What strategy you should initiate? So let me quickly take a look at your answers. I've already checked them before. Okay, so Gilbert, I will mute your microphone. If you want to say anything, just let me know. I will unmute it back, but there is some background noise. That's why I... Okay, it seems there is... And you also experience some issues with the sound, do you? Okay, so maybe I should just stabilize my camera. Let me fix it quickly. Just not in time with my picture, so there is a problem with synchronization. Interesting. Okay, and if I do it in a different way, for example, if I use my other camera, let's say this one, isn't it better? My computer here. Yeah, like that. Isn't it better? Okay, let's use this camera for the webinar, okay? Probably the other camera is really good for recording. I think the problem is that that new camera produces a very, very large traffic. And because of that, there is a problem with the synchronization. So let's use this camera instead. Okay, fine. So yeah, there was a homework. Now let me open your answers. So regarding this position, there was a comment by John. So bishop takes f3. Bishop takes f3, and when g takes f3, well, so here queen g7 is a blunder because of bishop f5 and the queen is hanging, and even the queen is trapped. So bishop f3, then g takes f3, bishop f5, queen moves, where, for example, the queen moves to, let's say, to e3, and then queen f6. Well, yes, it's playable. They're gonna play c3 and later consider doing f4, so I don't think it's the best strategy. Instead, just knight gf6 should be fine. So e5 is not playable here. If, let's say, e5 is played, you can capture with your knight, and after they take with their knight. So here you simply play bishop b4, take the queen, or in case if they take, you deliver a checkmate on d1. So that's why e5 is not an option, and knight gf6 is a very natural move. For example, knight c3 and queen e7. And the plan then is still to castle queenside and continue the attack. For example, here it was castle. Then white decided to play knight d2, which is not a good move. Not a blunder, but not a good move at all. Knight b6, queen goes to b3. And in this position, such move like queen e5 provided black with a huge advantage. The game here continued with bishop e6 instead, which looks natural, and the queen should go to b5 and then back to e2, but instead they blocked with the knight, because the original idea was to block with the knight, I mean to move the knight to c4. And what would you play in this position for black? Who can tell me? Okay, so okay, perfect. I'm reading your comments here in Zoom as well as on YouTube. So how to play here? How to punish white for such a play? There is definitely a pin, but I'm not sure if we can take advantage of the pin. I think the reason of knight c4 is that uh, they just simply forget about, I mean, white forget about another problems of their position. Look at this pin. Can you transform it not to a pin, but to a discovered attack instead? Yeah, thank you, John. So it's bishop f2, bishop f2. So they have to take it because if they move the king, they cannot move to the d file. So only e2 is an option. Then bishop c4 winning the queen. So that's why they have to take. And then knight g4. And then you take here. And it's a winning position. The king is too weak. Okay, so well, it of course it happens in case if white doesn't play properly. In case if white plays properly, it's approximately equal position. So, for example, here after castling, they'd better continue with bishop e2 and castle king side, so keeping the knight, protecting this g5 bishop. Okay, this second position. So this is where I ask you to come up with a plan. Let me check what your yeah, so exactly this is the position I asked you to do. And so I see there was John who sent the answer. And finally, we decided, well, that, so the suggestion was to play knight d3, they take, and just knight f6 with c6. Well, okay. That's not the best thing to play. Instead, you can initiate queen f6 attack, because if this guy plays this move, then knight d3 becomes a discovered attack. So this is a must to protect, but this is how they lose on f4. And queen g4 doesn't help. By the first glance, it seems that we lose a piece by playing bishop f4 because it's a check and a fork. But you remember the main problem is this b2 pawn. So bishop f4 and you, or maybe queen f4, and you take there. And then the rook is lost. So even if the queen f4 move, it's still a rook is lost, and black should be winning here. Instead, in this position, they'd better play knight c3. But after knight c3, you take, and so here the number of pawns is equal. They have a weakness here, a weakness here. So queen e3, knight f6 with a temper, and black is better. Not much, but definitely better. So that was the homework from Albin Blockburn Gambit. Now we have another topic, and I would like to start with this recent game played by my student. Well, the position is approximately equal. Black plays knight d5. So if you want to know what the engine says it's plus 0.2. So which means equal. Maybe white is better, but just very little, and you cannot realize this advantage. So what do you think? How white should play for a win in this position? There is no tactics. There are no certain weaknesses in the enemy position. So they can, for example, well, this is a weakness, but they can always play g6. So what are your suggestions? I'm listening to you. By the way, if you want to say something, you can unmute yourself and suggest it as a, I mean, you can suggest your line or your plan by voice. So, before thinking about the plan, let's evaluate the position. Well, of course, we understand that it's approximately equal because this is what I told you. But when you evaluate the position, you are also thinking about advantages and disadvantages. And you are trying to exploit your advantages and enemy disadvantages. So, for example, here, well, there is the C file semi-open, and probably it does make sense to locate the rook on the C file. You are not pressuring this, but maybe then you can play knight C5 and get the knight into the enemy territory. There is the E file semi-open, and they can do the same thing with their knight, but actually their knight on D5 is already good. Well, the pawns here are doubled. It's not a big issue, but later in the game, once the king goes to h2, it's cut off from the place of action, which usually happens in the center. So now it's not a big problem. Moreover, it stops f4. That's why it's okay. So there are no weaknesses. They have a pawn majority on that flank. We have knights. The position is close, so maybe maneuvering with knights is better. But I think that once we go knight c5, they are ready to exchange the knight for the bishop. So what comes to your mind? Okay, so there is a suggestion by John, knight bd2. Knight bd2 and, well, knight c4 then. So you think that it's likely to provoke b5, and b5 makes this pawn vulnerable. That's true. Anything else? Okay, knight e5 and rook ac1. So I myself do not like this move. I think they take. We have double pawns. And what was the purpose of this move? So if we attack here, they just block it with c6. I mean, support it with c6. And we have to take care about the e5 pawn, because if only we do f4, let's say knight f5, this, and if we do f4, this pawn is the object of the attack. So I don't think it's knight e5. Rook ac1 maybe. Knight bd2 or knight fd2, maybe two. So what happened in the game? Rook ac1 with no explanation. This is just a good move because this move brings the rook to the, oops, sorry about that. It brings the rook to the square where it becomes helpful. Okay, so rook ac1, the rook is helpful, the rook supports here. And what is the next move? Well, here, because of knight c5, which is not actually a threat, but c5 is a good square for the knight, and they don't want to exchange the bishops because then there will be some attack. So let's say just a natural move like that, then knight c5, and they have to play this move, after which we can go there and occupy e5. Uh, and if they take, then they have to support the knight with c6. And if they do so, then we have a plan of undermining the c6 pawn and making c6 a weakness. Of course, it may not happen if your opponent plays properly, but at least it gives us an object of the attack. So if we want to succeed, in equal positions, one of the main things that we should be doing is attacking the enemy weaknesses. So we should provoke our opponent to create weaknesses. It can be weak squares or weak pawns, and then we should try to exploit them. So, for example, today I'm also going to show the example where black had two weak pawns and they were defending them. So white was attacking one pawn, then moving the piece to attack another pawn, and that forced black to defend. However, the second front was required in order to play for a win, so I will demonstrate all that stuff for you later. This is our third example, I think. So knight c5 looks good. It improves our pieces. What happened in the game? Well, b6. After that, knight c5 no longer works. Doing this doesn't make sense. Moreover, it creates weakness into our camp, and they can go there. So it's a bit annoying. What you should do? Well, I thought that here the best move is knight bd2 with the idea of knight c4 and get the e5 square control. However, white played with the wrong knight. It doesn't affect the evaluation the position a lot, but then this knight becomes useless because it cannot go anywhere. So rook a c8. Well, probably they want to play c5. I don't know what for. Well, doing this knight was better in my opinion, because then knight c4 and then one of the knights can go there and maybe occupy e6, because after doing b6, c6 is the weakness, and if you now set the knight on c6, this knight will definitely interfere the black's actions. So knight fd2, rook ac8, knight c4. So bishop goes to e7. Well, again, so if we see there is a weakness on c6 and the c7 pawn may be the target too, it does make sense to let white capture and then exchange pieces through the c file. But white wouldn't capture immediately. White would probably continue with this move, take with the knight, and then try to target d6 too. So bishop e7. The knight goes to e5, f6. Not a good move because it only provokes knight c6, which was one of the original goals. Well, what if not f6? What else they can play? For example, rook f e8. Why not? What would you do in such a case? How would you continue? So knight c6 maybe, right? What else? Maybe remaneuver this knight, one knight to c6, the other knight to e5. Well, ideally, I would like to set one knight on d3, the other one on c6. So I think knight c6 works. Then maybe a6 or a5, and then rook c2 to pressure and try to make this a weakness. You always have knight a7, knight b5. Something similar happened in the game. So f6, knight c6, a5. And this is where white missed a very nice opportunity. White played knight d2, remaneuvering with the knight. But instead, they could play a simple, not simple, but a small tactical strike. Can you suggest, do you see any tactical combinations here for white? So what we see, the knight is attacking this bishop, right? But there is the enemy knight protecting it. So if we can push e4 and chase the knight away, we win a piece. Also, the knight can be even trapped there. But we cannot play e4 right away, right? So we can try g4. And if they take, then yes, they lose the material. So knight f4, knight takes e7. That's why they have to play g6. And after g takes f5 and g takes f5, we make double pawns, and these two isolated pawns are weaknesses that we can take advantage of later in the when we exchange more pieces. So these pawns will become vulnerable, not now. Also, doing f3, I think, leads to bishop here. So if you play f3, then bishop d6. And e4, not sure if it does make sense. e4, they take, then the knight goes there, then to g4, g3 is vulnerable. So I don't think it's a good idea. So, but g4 right now works. Instead, white missed this tactical idea and played knight d2, bishop d6, knight c4, and rook f7. So finally, they realized that they need to open the c file to get some counterplay, and that the c7 is a weakness. And with knight on c6, they are totally stuck. So what now? It's still equal. Well, you can still play g4, of course, and then no, g4 doesn't work this time so well. What do you think you can do? Maybe there is a simple tactical strike that you can find too. So they just played rook f7, what this rook is not doing. Okay, one of the ideas is to play knight a7 and knight b5. Yeah, it does make sense. What else? So, well, knight a7, rook goes to d8, then knight b5, and you are actually not threatening to take on c6, on d6, I mean. So it doesn't work so well. What else? Well, as I said, the f rook moved to f7, which means it no longer protects on c8. So knight d6 could be a fork. in case if the c pawn is pinned. So we just need to get rid of this knight and at the same time keep the enemy rook on c8. Because if we play this, he goes there and then we take, they just take with the pawn and they are completely fine. But if we take here and they take back, then knight d6 works perfectly well. So, well, white was just a club player, so he missed this tactical opportunity with knight 6 a5 and instead played rook c2, doubling the rooks. Again, this move is not clear what this move is played for, but doubling the rooks on the file that can be potentially open later in the game is definitely a helpful thing. So it's a helpful move. So actually, I think it's time to talk about what you should do in equal positions, what types of strategies you should initiate. Here, I mentioned that we should create weaknesses into, well, first of all, evaluate to define advantages and disadvantages, and then create weaknesses and take advantage of these weaknesses in the enemy position. However, it's not the only strategy. What else you can do? Well, you can make enemy pieces passive. Well, again, when they defend weaknesses, for example, or instead you can fight for the central squares, which will provide you more room to maneuver. Something similar happened in the game that I'm going to show later. Well, what else? Creating the second front, like the Nimzovich principle of creating a second weakness. Like you attack a certain weakness or you perform a certain plan on one side of the board, and then you switch to the other side of the board, but your opponent cannot bring his pieces as quick as you can because you have more space, for example. So these are the most common strategies. But with your moves, you should think prophylactically. So uh, you don't see how you win, right? But you understand that this move is potentially helpful for my position and it doesn't create weaknesses and doesn't provide my opponent with a counterplay. So if I have the rooks doubled, maybe later in a certain moment, I will capture on d6 and enter the enemy camp with my rooks. So this is how it works. The knight on c6 is not attacking anything, but prevents the enemy pieces from occupying these squares, where these pieces can be more helpful. It also attacks these two. It's not so important, but the other thing the knight does, it stops the c pawn, so I don't care about any counterplay with c5 if I have my knight on c6. But I have to keep an eye on such moves like knight e7 when he tries to exchange this knight. Well, and for this move, I have actually knight d6, which allows me later to capture on e7 and take this rook. So rook c2. Doubling the rooks is definitely a good idea. Bishop goes there, rook fc1, g6. So it's still approximately equal. And white plays a slow plan in order to prepare his pieces for opening the position. Or maybe he wants to add pressure and provoke black to make a mistake. So knight a7. Why knight a7? So to attack this, knight goes to b5. c7 is not hanging, but just moving this knight away will create some problems. Rook e7. So the bishop is blocked, and it seems they defended c7 enough times. So knight d2. What's the purpose of knight d2? Who can answer? This move has actually two reasons. This move was played because of two reasons. One of them, I'm still waiting for your answers. One of them was to open the C file, but what was the other one? So what else this knight may do? C7 is a weakness. So, okay, I'll tell you. The first reason was to open the C file in order to tie enemy pieces down to the protection of the C7 pawn, while we can probably do something else. But this is a defender, and this is a passive piece. So every time during this game, well, not every time, but maybe every 3 to 5 moves, White was trying to evaluate the position and try to understand what did change. So what are advantages and disadvantages? For example, now the bishop is passive, it's not participating in the game. That's why by playing this move, we are tying these pieces and the bishop is not doing anything. So bishop h6, of course, should be played and he should be looking for some counterplay, but it doesn't work here. And the second idea was to exchange the defender. So knight b1, knight c3. Because the position is closed, then long-term strategies are likely to work. So by getting rid of this defender, it's easy to weaken the c7. So rook d7, but we still need to get rid of this knight because this knight in the center not only supports the c7 pawn, but is better than our knight. So this knight. And this is where I think they started making mistakes. So c5. Why c5? What else they could do actually? So for example, if if they take, then this, and this is the object of the attack. So they can probably continue with bishop d6 move. However, then this, and we are about to capture. No, wait. We are about to take with a knight. If they take with the rook, they lose on c7. If they take with the c pawn, they lose there. And there is nothing they can do to avoid it. So that's why knight c3 wasn't played. What else? Maybe c6. What's your opinion? How to deal with c6? Yeah, okay. Thanks for suggesting c6. Yes, it's definitely a playable move. The knight is trapped. That's why we are forced to capture on d5, right? So we are forced to capture on d5. They definitely take that knight on d5, not this one, because in such a case they lose the pawn, and then our knight escapes either here or here, or we can just protect it with rook c6 move. So we gain a pawn. That's why they have to take. They can capture with their rook or the pawn. First, let's discuss this move, a rook move, then knight c3. The rook has to move back, probably to d6 to be able to protect it. And then we can play maybe this move and attack this and that. Now this c6 is a weakness and it's almost impossible to protect it. So b5, knight, well, where does the knight go? To b6 or to, well, actually knight b6 is not bad. Knight b6, yeah, I think it works. We are threatening to take. So if they, let's say, decide to do this, then unfortunately rook b6 doesn't work immediately because we lose our knight. But we can start with this, chase the rook away, and then take on c6. This is how the knight is saved. Knight b6, well, if they play this move to try to protect on c6, then d5 works. So we are taking advantage of the pin. So c5, we just, oh, we cannot take on c5, right? c5, the knight is trapped, unfortunately. So knight a8, no, it doesn't work. Okay, so d5 doesn't work. Let's think about something else. I think maybe a4 works first because we are trying to undermine and they cannot ignore it. So probably they, well, b4. Well, if they do b4, then this move works well. Actually, no, let's play this instead and take on e5. And if this move, hmm, well, maybe this, and if they try to protect this time, we put the knight to b3. And now they cannot protect two weaknesses simultaneously. If the rook goes to a7, then rook c6. If they try to play c5, which does make sense too, then we win this pawn with just a pin knight b3. So taking with the pawn was probably the best move for black. What do you think about this position and how can you continue here? So guys, I'm waiting for your suggestions. So it's materially equal. You have the C file open, you are doubled with your rooks, but how to convert this advantage into something else which may provide you with winning chances. Should we exchange the rooks? Okay, maybe rook c6. Okay, thank you for your suggestions. Rook c6 is definitely something that deserves our attention. I would actually play rook c8 and rook c6 with my other rook. But maybe even rook c6 right away is a good idea. Well, now I don't have knight d6 because the bishop takes. However, it's still fine, so I can still do this move. And how does it work? So they take with the bishop because it's a fork. Now I do this. Now if he does this rook, I take on b6. If he does with this rook, I take on f6. And if he doesn't do anything, at least I win a pawn. So it works. But I would still prefer to playing this with the idea of bringing the second rook. Then this bishop is pinned. So probably king g7 to get the bishop unpinned. Then they block. And now I can choose what I want. So I would probably play this. I don't want to give up my super knight. I would rather capture this pawn for free. What happens then? So rook d7, you take and take on b6, and it should be a winning position. So this is how it works. These prophylaxis that White did before became very helpful for future for future plans because White was just pressuring the weakness and at the same time was ready for opening the C file. That's the reason why he decided to double the rooks on the C file in advance, not only to pressure but to penetrate the enemy camp if in case if for example something like that happens. Okay, c5. Black is trying to get rid of the weakness. So what would you continue here? Well, there are several things you can do. In my opinion, the most simple one is to follow the plan and get rid of this knight, which happened in the game, and then knight c3. So rook goes back, let's say here. And originally, when I was analyzing this position, I was thinking about d5 move. However, I don't think it's a good idea. So because d5, bishop d6, we still keep the position closed. And then how to open it? Maybe just with b4 later in the game. But if instead you decide to play d takes c5 and he takes with the bishop, you have knight a4. And knight a4 actually wins a pawn. So they cannot protect on they cannot protect on c5. They can only play this move to try to capture on b2 in case if you decide to win this pawn on c5. What you should do in such a case? Well, I don't want this to happen, but even if this happens, you get at least one extra pawn. So rook d7, let's say, and it seems like a draw because they are able to invade the second rank, but it's extra pawn. So, well, I wouldn't take on c5. I would consider bringing the king first, or even playing something like rook c4, because if he does this, I take, then I win. Okay, no, I first bring the king, or even bring my rook there. But what I like about the position is that I can invade the enemy camp here with my pieces. So rook d1 at least allows me to play rook d8, because if he offers an exchange, I accept it. Then I play king f1, let's say king f7, and then I take on c5. So rook c7 doesn't work because I have b4, and if he takes, I'm a pawn up. So he doesn't take this pawn. So this is a position with huge winning chances. Okay, let's continue. So b takes c5. This is what happened in the game. But this pawn is still a weakness. This move was played. So what would you suggest now? What do you think? Because taking on c4 still is not attractive because bishop takes, rook b2, and if we take on a5, they do this and enter the second rank, and then, well, we would have to defend the position. That would be a draw because probably our a pawn dies in such a case. Oh, I can show you. So let's say a4, maybe this. Well, rook a7 is a winning move, actually. So maybe it's not so obvious. Okay, what else they can do? Maybe just king g7 first. Yeah, king g7 first, and then rook d2. This is how it helps. Okay, so what would you play here? Rook b7. I don't want to give up the pawn. Any suggestions? Well, king f1, definitely yes. White instead choose the rook move. So they played rook d1, but they played rook d2, rook d1 is playable too. This move. So with the idea of entering the enemy camp and attacking the pawns from behind. So rook fc7, rook d8, king f7 to unpin. Rook goes here. And by attacking this weakness, white provoked black to play rook a7. Now the rooks are exchanged and the c5 pawn is captured. And this is the position where white plays for a win. So well, rook here and here. Oh, actually, rook b7, maybe it's better just to protect the pawn, bring the king first, and then try to advance it. Why this doesn't work? So because knight d3, so because the rook is protected, so there is no way to take advantage of the pin. Even before is a good move. So this is how, by playing these moves, white rocked the position of black by occupying the weak squares, by maneuvering with their pieces, and by exchanging enemy pieces, which were playing the most important role in the black's position, such as this knight on d5. Okay, uh, fine. So let's continue. Oh, well, the game actually ended not in the white favor. But white was much, much better with good chances to win that game. Now let's take a look at the second example. What do we have in this position? Black has the central control with his pieces. Black definitely has more space. And the rest is to find what black can do. So some people say that, okay, there should be a tactical strike. Not obligatory. There can be no tactics at all. And your task is to instead take advantage of of the benefits that you already have. So these knights in the center and the pawns that control some certain squares into the enemy territory, and the fact that the white pieces are absolutely restricted, they don't really have many squares, may provide you with a certain plan. So what would you suggest? So when I demonstrated this position to one of my students, she said that she would love to play b5, and then she would threaten with knight b3. So she wanted to take advantage of this square being weak, but this is actually a blunder because after rook a7, knight b3 is not so serious. Moreover, after that, it's possible to take on d5 and on e7. So it doesn't work at all. So when you are looking for how to win in approximately equal or even a slightly better position, which is quite complex, where you cannot where you cannot come up with a proper plan, you don't see anything obvious, you have to maneuver. This is the key. You have to maneuver and you have to exploit your strong side. So here, for example, what is the main weakness in the white's position? What do you think? So you can suggest the move if you want. Okay, bishop h3 is a nice idea to get rid of this bishop. They may not let you take. They may play bishop h1, let's say. So, but a kingside attack is a possible plan here. So, well, you probably understand that if your opponent has weaknesses in the position, you should try to attack them. Or if they are weak pawns, then you try to attack them. If these are weak squares, you are trying to set a certain piece on this weak square into the enemy territory to, well, just to take advantage of the activity of such a piece. Because let's say the knight on c6 from the previous game, uh, I think paralyzed some of the black's plans, and that's why their actions were restricted. So here, the weakness is the e2 pawn, and you can attack it with bishop g4, which Botvinnik played in the game. And how to play? Well, f3. Yes, f3 is definitely a possibility, but what f3 does for the position? This bishop now becomes terrible. E3 is a weakness. So just bringing the bishop back and continue playing it with such moves like this, this, maybe even liquidating this knight, or instead initiated an attack because g3 becomes weaker is definitely possible here. But f3 wasn't played. Instead, after bishop g4, white decided to capture on d4 to decrease the number of attackers of this pawn. Now, the main question. So which pawn would you take? Okay, so yeah, I see some answers on YouTube. Does anybody inside our Zoom meeting have any suggestions? So which is better, to open the file or to get the other file semi-open? So for me, the answer is obvious. Even if I met this position for the first time, I would definitely explain why. Okay, so thank you, Michael. Yes, with the e pawn. Why with the e pawn? Because this is a chronicle weakness. So we have the file open and we're gonna attack this pawn anyway. If we instead open the C file, we do not attack a2 and we potentially allow our opponent to obtain a counterplay through the C file. Maybe we can have some counterplay through the C file too, but here it's even better to not let our opponent play, but at least have a one plan which improves our position and creates problem for white. So e2 is a weakness. I'm not sure if we can win it, but we will definitely pressure it, tying enemy pieces down to it. So queen d2, bishop f8 opening the file, rook e1 protecting on e2, rook e8, and h4. What do you think? How to continue? Well, I'm sure you may understand the purpose of h4, because this knight, where does it go? So they want to play knight here and knight here, so that's why they play h4. But h4 weakens the king's position a little, and maybe later in the game you can take advantage of it. So what would you suggest? Do you have any prophylaxis that makes sense here? Or maybe you should improve your position or weaken the enemy position by means of exchanges? Okay, well, bishop h3 suggested by Eduardo. Please explain what's the purpose of bishop h3? How does it work? Okay, actually, bishop h3 does make sense. However, this is not the only plan. What else you can do? Well, something like that, preparing for e3 or e4, which makes the d3 a weakness in such a case. Bishop e6, maybe with this idea and with bishop d5. Actually, this is what was later played in the game. So bishop h3, he wanted to get rid of this bishop. Now white decided to not do this and played bishop f3. Rook e7, knight h2. Rooks are double to attack here. Well, king h1, maybe not so helpful for the position. And then bishop e6, with the idea to settle the bishop on d5 and exchange for the bishop on f3, which makes the e2 more a weakness. Because originally, after doing h4, it's obvious that with this strategy, white gets rid of this bishop as the attacker of the e2 pawn. So that's why exchanging the bishops, exchanging the potential defender of the pawn is a good idea. Okay, so b3, well, just a waiting move, but it creates a weakness on c3 and you can take advantage of it later in the game. The game continued with knight b4, bishop g2, and bishop d5. So they still want to keep these bishops on the board, knight f3. Well, again, hard to come up with a move. What would you play here? Any suggestions? Here, Mikhail Botvinnik didn't play a move which starts active plan. He just made a move which we can call a kind of psychological move. A move that illustrates that there probably can be another plan that white should take into consideration too. So, uh-huh. So rook e6, well, to double, probably. Now, rook e6, actually, there is a problem with bishop h3, so it doesn't fully work. Well, rook e6, bishop h3, you have to take on f3 with a check, they take there. Oh, actually, it works. So rook e6 is a possibility, but they can play king g2 move, and then what? If you play queen e7 to increase the pressure, then I think they are ready for e4. So take, knight takes, and if you take on b3, well, you actually gain a pawn in such a case. Queen b2, the d3 is not hanging, but where the bishop goes? Ah, to d5. It still can go to d5. Knight takes knight, and maybe d4. Well, you have extra pawn, so this is a possibility to convert your advantage to a pass pawn. So this is a plan. Instead, rook f7 was played. Well, I don't think king g8 is a helpful move, but rook f7. What does rook f7 do? Nothing. But with this move, black shows that probably they want to do this. Of course, f5 is not a threat at the moment, because at least of 95 move. Actually, 95 doesn't fully work, right? So let me spend the tempo on a useless move, then 95, bishop g2, king g2, queen d5, and knight f3. So the knight retreats, and then f4 looks good. But maybe after bishop g2, there is no need to capture, and this is just a possibility. And after queen d5, knight f7. So if queen takes, then king g2. Maybe king g8 and bishop h1 is a threat, but I don't think it's playable because knight g5, knight f3, and you have to take with the bishop. You gain a pawn probably, but is it enough? I think not. Anyway, so rook f7 doesn't mean that they're gonna play f5, but they are, with this move, black is saying that probably we're gonna play f5 later when we get rid of one of these two knights. King h2. Bishop goes to d6. Yeah, rook f7 also helps to release the bishop. And maybe attack g3 square with something else. And if they take, then b3 is a weakness. So this knight on c4 allowed white to cement their position on the queen side. And exchanging it means that now, especially after queen e6, white has to think about two weaknesses simultaneously. So bishop h3, queen d8, rook a b1, protecting here, rook goes back, knight g1, defending here. Bishop c7. What you can do now? So they played knight e3 in this position. And what do you think? Which plan to come up with? The position changed. You have your bishop on a better spot. Instead of just doing nothing on f8, it does something maybe on this diagonal. So b3 is a weakness, but it's protected. e2 is a weakness, but it's also protected. What should we do? How do we play for win? Yeah, you remember when I was explaining the previous game, I was telling you about the second front. So you should come up with the second plan, not only attacking weaknesses here. So, for example, Eduardo suggests playing a6 to close, no, not with the idea of b5, just to not let knight b5 happen. Well, this is a possibility, I agree, but I don't think this is a promising move. What does it? Well, because knight b5 is not a threat, just bishop b8. Okay, guys. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with this idea, but there is even a tactical motive devoted to it. It's called vacating a square. So here, for example, by moving the bishop to b7, we vacate the d5 square. Well, you may play either knight, queen d5 to threaten h1, not g2, but h1, which will provoke f3 and would create a weakness here. Or maybe it would provoke knight f3, after which e2 becomes weaker. So, or you may vacate it for the knight and set the knight on c3 and then attack e2 with even more forces. So bishop b7. Well, for example, if this move, then I think you can just take it and take here. And then you go back and you have extra pawn. However, if you play like that, you let him to obtain some counterplay. So d2 is not playable because they take. So this is risky. So maybe instead we will play knight here, then knight there, and then take on e2 with our knight and take on f3. That could make sense. Because, well, let's say they play this, we play that, because they don't have e4. If they do e4, we take en passant, they take our knight, we take their knight. So it works well. Instead, in the game, white realized that the attack through the main diagonal is very dangerous, and let's get rid of the bishop. Knight d5. So there was a lot of maneuvering, which improved the black pieces, and now black is ready for the final blow, which will provide them with material advantage. So knight c2, queen d6. So g3 is a target. So potentially you're threatening with knight a3, and if the pawn takes, you take here. Does white have any counterplay? Well, no, I don't think they can stop knight a3. So they play knight a3, knight e3 was played, and here they realized that they shouldn't take. They played king h1 in the game. But before we analyze it, let's talk about something else. So let's say, yes, there is a tactical strike knight a3, but if, for example, this tactical strike doesn't work, do we have any winning chances by doing positional means only? For example, in the previous game where my student was playing, he missed a few tactical strikes, which could allow him to either ruin the black pawn structure um, or win a pawn on a5. So, but he was still able to outplay his opponent by positional maneuvering. Can black, instead of playing knight a3, suggest anything else here? What do you think? Okay, there is a suggestion of f5, or is probably f4 at the very next step, but well, it's interesting, I think. So you play f5, well, they play knight b5, unfortunately. Queen c6, knight has to block, otherwise there is a discovered attack, then bishop b8. And then let's say b4, well, maybe b4 is not a good move. Let's say just any move, and then f4 works. But this time they play g4 and the position is still closed. So you should play f4 when you attack the g4 square enough times. For example, maybe you first need to move the queen to c8 or to d7, let's say to d7, and then play f4. But then they can play queen g5, so not everything is clear. But I like f5. What else? Knight c3 with knight takes e2. Yes, looks strong. Knight c3. Okay, knight c3, rook. Well, but rook b2 then, and e2 is protected. What else? Okay, so, well, yeah, rook a3 is interesting. You threaten to take there. I think they would react with knight f3. So g5. Well, what does this move do? So, for example, well, knight b5 is not dangerous. We can still do that. But let's say they take on g5. We take, and now we have the kingside attack. So if they take here, it's rook g7, and then knight e3 and rook g3, everything. Okay, Juan, can you please stop drawing and remove it? Okay, I can fix it. Fine. Let's continue. So this works really well. We can even double and then sacrifice the rook here. What if they don't take? So let's say g5. If they don't take, then we take. So probably to not open the position, they have to play h5. But then this pawn is a weakness, so we can simply play knight f4 and win this pawn. So if they take here, we take with the g, and it's a decisive attack because the king cannot escape simply. So knight f3, let's say rook g7, king goes to f1, queen d7, queen h3. So they can only stop it with what, e4 to escape, and take, check. He escapes, but rook g2. Yes, it is a disaster. So g5, well, the so-called second front, when you open the position on the king side in order to convert your material advantage on that side, because the pieces are miscoordinated. So only these two, the queen and the rook, are doing something certain. They are protecting e2. So these pieces are well placed. The other pieces are not doing anything. And because of that, white can black can play where he wants. It can be on the king side because it's easy to bring the pieces there. And these two pieces are already attacking, and the knight can jump and attack the king side too. So knight a3, and the game becomes winning. So if they take, it is a disaster. So for example, this move, then pawn takes, and we are threatening to checkmate and to take the queen too. So king h1 was played. Knight to g4. What now? This is hanging. So if they just move the king, we can still take it. Queen f4 instead. Then we exchange the queens, and after that, take on d3 and take on f4, and this is a winning position with a lot of extra pawns. If, let's say, they tried something like that, then knight f2 would win the game. So this, and let's decide in this position. I think that this move wins the game. You can do this on the very next move. Maybe you can first start with a rook and then play this. So here you are threatening with queen g4, rook g3 to capture the knight. Well, which is a good idea too, because if the knight moves, so queen g4, rook g3, and if the knight moves, you just play queen h3, and still it leads to a checkmate. Okay, fine. So we had two games. In the first one, it was approximately equal, and in that game, White was trying to maneuver with his pieces to provoke weaknesses into the enemy camp, and these are club players, so I think these guys play approximately at the same strength as you play. And the second game is a game played by Grandmasters, where Black's position was slightly better, but still not enough to play for a win. And here, Black was trying to take advantage of his benefits and the disadvantages of the enemy position. Because of extra space, he could maneuver easily. And this, the art of maneuvering, is the best, maybe the best skill that you need to improve to be able to play such positions for a win. Okay, so now we come to the third example, and actually this is what we're gonna play against. I gonna play with black pieces against you. So this is the end game. White has a better pawn structure. White takes on c6, but white doesn't win a pawn. So this is definitely losing for black. Instead, there is rook c8, and this time there is no check with the knight, so you cannot unpin. So what do you think? Which move do you have to play? Uh, King e2, King e2, rook c6. Rook c5, yeah, thanks. Yes, it's rook c5, obviously rook c5. Why? Because if they take with the rook, you take on d5 and win a pawn. So this check doesn't help because you save the pawn on a2 by blocking with a rook. And if they take with the pawn, then these two are weaknesses. Because if you, let's say, play king e2, they take with a rook and you exchange the rooks and then you say, okay, these are weaknesses, still you are mistaken, because these pawns are weaknesses only in case if you can attack them. If you don't have pieces to attack, they are not weaknesses. So rook c5, well, you threaten this, so they have to capture with the pawn to save the pawn on d5. Now king e2, so the rook is tied down to these two pawns. King e7, king d3, king d6, rook a5 with a temper, rook a8 is a must, and king d4, even c5 is stopped. So black plays f5. b4 to fix this square. Rook b8, they would love to exchange the a6 for the b4, but a3, and now they have to bring the rook back. Well, bringing the rook here, where it can protect several weaknesses in the same time, I mean these two a6 and c6, means that the rook is tied down, so the rook is passive on b6. It only does defensive functions. For example, the rook on a8 would move to here with a check or could attack something else. So keeping the rook here is a bad idea. However, by the first glance, it seems good. No, it's a mistake. So this is a blunder. So rook a8 was played. And this is the position that we're gonna play. Your task will be to play for white. So let me send it. I have, yeah, yeah. So this is the position that you're gonna play. You're gonna play it with white pieces. I will be playing it with white. So it's here in the chat and here on the screen. I'm going to chess.com and so by the way, guys, those of you who want to support what I'm doing, my work and the webinars, you can use this link. So there is a button to donate. So of course, the webinars are free, but if you would like to support, if you like the content that I create, I would appreciate any help. So it's easy to use this button. You click donate and then you enter the amount that you want to donate and then PayPal button. So it transfers you to your PayPal account. You have to enter it here. And then the money are automatically delivered to my PayPal. So I would appreciate any help, and this helps me to prepare more and better content for you. Because I'm doing these webinars for 3 years, almost every Sunday. Now let's do the game. So let me accept. accept, fine, and play. We're gonna play from this, okay, where is it? So here I have to custom, I have to choose custom. It's not standard, it's from a certain position. The time control is 15 plus 10, and then I need to set up the position. So this is for those of you who attend our webinars for the first time. This is a new format which I decided to practice. So you learn something, and now your task is to implement what you learned and try to defeat me. In this position, white has advantage, but it's not so easy to win it. So I'm playing with black. Who wants to play? You can tell me your username. I will put it here and send you a challenge. So probably Parallax wants to play. Yeah. So like, let me copy the link here. This link should start the position from here. Okay, play. However, sometimes chess.com has some bugs. I mean bugs. That's why it may not work properly. Anyway, if you want to play, just tell me your username. I will send you a challenge. Okay, h4. Okay, rook a7. I'm just a waiting move. Nobody else wants to play? Okay. Yeah, I see some usernames in the chat on YouTube, so I'll send you a challenge a little later. Just let me clarify how to play here. Okay. Mm, So h6. New game. Custom. Okay, the challenge is set to the bad hombre. By the way, do you see my screen? G3. Okay. Okay, let me check. Maybe it wasn't a good idea, actually. Let me check once again. I think that was a mistake, actually. I need to go back and protect the pawn. G4. Okay, I have to take on G4, I think. Okay, so, and in this position, let's do this. Okay, I take here. Yeah, let me start a new one. Just a sec. Wait, is it the username? No? Okay. Mm-hmm. So 2100 player, okay, fine. The challenge is sent. Mm-hmm. So here, well, I can deliver a check. What I don't like about this is that b5 is coming. So which country? Hungary. I've been in Budapest. I was participating in a few tournaments there. H4, okay. 7. So rook c5 here. Okay, fine. Let's do rook e8. And this is where I don't know how to play. Let me think a little. Yeah, you have to play quickly because otherwise the game will abort. So you have to make a move within 30 seconds. Okay, rook c5, fine. Let's just do this. Okay. So I want to play this move, but the problem is king h5, rook g3. So maybe I just play rook g5. Yeah, let me play rook g5. Okay, one more game. If anybody else wants to play, just let me know. Okay, rook a8. King c7 maybe. What do you think? What about rook g4? Here I think I can play rook e4 and let my opponent capture the pawn on a6. Okay, this move. So rook c4, rook h8. But then I play this move. Then, oh no, they cannot play h4. Okay, let me do this. e4. Ah, so I miss b5, of course. I don't have a chance to do anything else here. Let me take h. Okay, new game. So, custom. So after that, we will analyze the game. Don't worry. Not our games probably. However, maybe our games too, but definitely the game that what happened in the original game. So another challenge is sent. Yeah, rook h6. Okay, okay. Oh, this is gonna be a check. So my mistake. Oops, this is what I didn't want actually. I thought I can play this move. Well, I actually thought I can do this, but it's a blunder. Rook h6, king c7, rook takes h4. So I have to play rook c3 here. Yeah, b5, obviously. Ah, okay, wait a sec. I have a move that saves the game. It's rook c4. Check. Pick h6. I just want to repeat the position. Then I take here. So this is a threat. If I play this, it's still b5. Ah, no, b5 doesn't work. b5, I take with my rook. So this is a problem because I cannot play rook b4. So this is a problem. If I play, let's say, this move, then it's b7 and I cannot stop it. So I have to play this right away. Okay, fine. King goes to d6. This move. Oh, I just realized it's hanging. Mm, okay, let's take it. Here I can keep repeating. So you guys are actually doing well. G4, G5 is the plan. I can do this move. Okay, so how to draw the game here? I want to play c5, but then it is a check, after which I play king e7. It's completely fine. So c5 take, I take with my king, then king g4, king e4, Does anything changes if I play this move right away? So looks like this rook move traps my, I mean cuts my king. So king e5, what else? G5, okay, king c7. Okay, rook a7, let's keep protecting this move. And then I play this. So now I want to play rook g7 because I think this is a weakness too. If I take rook takes, I have another weakness, then g5 is played. So rook g7 is a must. Rook h4. King f5. Rook here. Rook b5. A4, rook b4 is a must. Rook c4. How to play? Well, if I play this move, it's a check, and then my opponent captures the pawn with another check. If I move my rook, yeah, I think moving the rook here is a good idea. Then it's definitely g4. Yeah, let's do it. So here c5 is a must. Then b7 check, but it's not a big issue. Okay, this move. Okay, fine. So for this move, if I play this, it's king f5. I'll play this is king f5. G5 is coming. Maybe I have time to play king here, king f6. No, I don't. What if I have to play this move? Let me try this maybe. Let me try this. King g5. a5, fine. Let's play h5. Yeah, I saw that move. So, uh-huh. I saw that move, but didn't understand that I lose the game here. Okay. Well, yeah, I was analyzing it definitely. So if I take on g5, then it's rook g5. So this, check king e4. Mm-hmm. So what else can I do instead of taking? No, I don't have anything else, so I should take here. King f6. Yeah, for king a6, what do I have? This move, rook e4. But then it's king f5. e7. Okay, yeah, it's hard to find a good move. King d6 doesn't more work, so let me do this move. So king e4 is the only option. h6, right. So this check doesn't make sense, right? Because the pawn is promoted. So king e4. Another check, king f5, he enters my camp. So this move doesn't make sense because of this. So this move. Okay, so here it should be a draw. I think I should take. Rook h6. Okay, rook a3. Rook c6. So check first or not, or king f4 first. Let's do king f4 first. No, wait, let's think first. Let's do king f4. Rook h5, right. So what did I prepare for this a5? I prepared a5. This move. So king g5 blocking. Rook a7. So b7 is not a threat. So I can play rook b5 to hang this pawn. Or I can play h4, and if I play h4, he does that. Okay, so h4. Okay, 5. Well, this is a draw. Okay, so here g5. How to play, how to play. Should I check from? Okay. Yeah, let me quickly think. This or this. Okay, let me do check first. This is a draw, so let me play just any move, including this. And here I want to offer a draw. It's the next game. It's not my turn. This here, it's my turn, so I play this move. King f4. Yeah, okay. I can, no. Well, actually, I have to. This move, so check. Now this. So king f5. Okay, so here it's obviously a draw. Thank you for the game. This, what else do I have? Where I'm low on time. So in these two, here and here. Okay, so this move. King f6, rook c5. How can I play? Rook here, h7. Well, it seems to be a losing position, actually. So check doesn't make sense. So king f7 only. King f7. Looks like I have to play it. So this move, it looks good. H3, then king d7. King c6. So this is my only chance. Maybe this is where I can play for a win. Mm-hmm. Or maybe not. So rook check, rook f4, rook g4. It's always a problem. Hmm. Oops. So let's try this check. Maybe, okay. I don't know whether it's losing or not. What else do we have here? King f6. So king f6, how do I play? King d7 maybe? Okay, rook c7. Okay, king goes... Well, b7 is a problem. If I go to b5, b7 is not working. Oh, it does work. Yeah, it does work. So this move, okay. Check with the king first. Yeah, let's check with the king first. This move. B7 is a problem. Oh, no, B7 is not. So I can play H4. H3, I mean. Let's do H3. So this move. Rook goes there. I play this move to stop it. A6, so rook A8. Well, H2, I should promote first. H1 equals queen. No, this is where I'm winning. Okay, so what else do I have here? Well, this is still a problem for me. I don't know how to play king of 6. Check. Okay, I don't care about this check. So king d6. King d7. King d7, rook c5, but it should be fine. Yeah, it should be okay. So king of 6. Now let's attack from there. So king goes there. So c5 doesn't work. If only I could locate the rook and behind the pawn, not in front of the pawn, I would probably draw the game then. Okay, let's play this. Rook h5, the same strategy. Okay, king d. No, 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 no. Rook b8. So here the queen is promoted, but I can deliver a checkmate, I think. This. Okay, there is no checkmate. Let me take here. Okay, thank you for the game. Well, this is a problem. H7, I have to go back. So, yeah, this is the problem because then I'm low. Yeah, okay, let me resign because it's a Zugzwang. So if I play this move, the king enters my camp. If I play this move, then the king enters my camp in that way. Well, let me do this. Then rook c6 just okay. This king d6, king g7. So I have to take, then king d6. Smooth. Yeah. So again, it's a Zugzwang. Let me resign. This is the game I won. So, and this is the problematic game where I have two pawns, but the enemy king is too far. So maybe I can take advantage of it and okay, c5, king d5. So I have two strategies. I can do this, or I can push the pawn. Let me push the pawn. So if my king was located better, I would probably win, but it seems to be a losing game, actually. Because the enemy king is able to stop my pawns. That's the reason. Yeah, what else? c4, then just check. Maybe c4 was a better move. Okay, so you guys actually play better than usually. I kindly recommend you to join a Zoom meeting next time.
Move that one. Don't move that one.
What do you suggest to move? Yes, and it's still a losing position. Okay, fine. Okay, good. So let me now show you what you should play. Where we are here. So definitely e4. h4 is a good idea too, but e4 first. So, well, people who want to play against me, please come to the webinar next time. You're gonna get a chance to play against me from a certain position again. So today we are done with live games. Let me just explain you what your strategy here should be. So that was good. This is what everyone did. King f4 and then h4 with h5, because this is how your king invades the enemy camp. King g4, rook e8, and h5. So here rook g8 was better, but such move wasn't played, instead g5. I didn't play g5 because I thought that this is a disaster. So, and then it's technically losing. g3, well, black has to stay and wait, but the white king goes back, and now you can enter the enemy camp with your rook. So with either the rook or the king. So rook e8, for example. Well, king f7 was winning too, because rook f7, king g6, and if they take, we take too, and h6 is lost, and the h5 pawn is then promoted faster. So rook e8, c5, well, last chance, probably. Check. King c6. Well, if king is 7, it's this. This is a triple attack. King c6, rook checks, and finally rook c5. So white won a pawn, and they are ready to enter the enemy camp. So rook h7, rook goes there, and rook e6. Now the king enters, because this king has to protect a6. So king f5, rook f7, and that's it. So this is how you could try the game. Oh, I think all of you played before. That's absolutely right. So this strategy with e4, opening the position, and then trying to invade the king side was definitely the most correct. Okay, we are done for today, so let's meet next Sunday. I don't know what's about the topic, or I don't know the topic of the next webinar, but I'm sure it will be something exciting. So I also have a homework for you. I will upload it here in the chat in Zoom. And if you register it for the webinar, you will receive an email with the recording and the homework tomorrow. So if not, you can message me at tricksofchess@gmail.com. And I will resend you this email. Okay, so we are done. See everyone next Sunday. Good luck with your games. I also gonna have some trainings this upcoming week, I think. Okay, see you then. Bye-bye.